Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving straight into the final moments of, well, arguably history's most famous conqueror, Alexander the Great. We're going to look closely at his last wishes. This was a figure who achieved absolutely unparalleled greatness, but at the very end, he recognized a universal truth that hits every single one of us. So we're going to see how true sovereignty isn't really about what you forcefully control while you're alive, but it's all about the powerful message you leave behind when you're gone. So how does the greatest conqueror face the absolute end? Think about it for a second. When you're literally renowned as Alexander the Great, when you've commanded vast resources and achieved absolute power across continents, how do you even approach the unavoidable reality that your life is ending? Well, instead of fiercely clinging to all that power, he actually used his very final moments to orchestrate this incredibly profound lesson for all of humanity. Section 1. The Final Conqueror's Defeat, Facing the Unavoidable End. He left behind 3 very specific instructions for his death, and this wasn't about trying to retain control from beyond the grave. No, it was about delivering a final, totally undeniable message to the world about our own mortality. He inherently understood that his funeral procession wouldn't just be some standard ceremony, it was going to be his ultimate public address. So he deliberately chose 3 highly symbolic wishes detailing exactly how his procession to the cemetery should be handled. And each of these wishes, they were masterfully designed to teach the living a critical lesson about the realities of human existence. Section 2. The Limits of Healing, the First Wish. Okay, so get this. There is a profound irony in his first request. His wish was that only the absolute best doctors should physically carry his coffin. Just picture that visual. The exact people whose entire life's purpose is to preserve health, to prevent death, they are the ones bearing the literal weight of the deceased. It's this incredibly striking paradox that he wanted every person in the crowd to witness firsthand. It brilliantly illustrates a hard truth. Human expertise has strict limits. You can surround yourself with the absolute pinnacle of human knowledge and healing, but you just cannot escape the sheer inevitability of death. This first wish is a humbling reminder that no matter who you are or how spectacularly great you are, your time on Earth is finite. Literally no amount of elite expertise can cheat mortality. Section 3. The Weight of Wealth, the Second Wish. Now, for his second command, he demanded that the massive riches he'd spent his entire life amassing, we're talking the money, the gold, the precious stones, be literally thrown out onto the ground during his funeral march. Imagine that staggering visual. Unimaginable wealth built up over a lifetime of ruthless conquest, just being tossed into the dirt along the path to the cemetery. He wanted the crowds to see the physical manifestation of his life's work quite literally being left behind in the dust. The core progression here is actually pretty simple. You absolutely cannot take your wealth with you when you clock out of this world. We all kind of get stuck in that trap of accumulating wealth, right? But this second wish completely forces us to look forward. When you pass, every single coin stays behind. So the really profound takeaway is that true happiness doesn't come from hoarding gold and gems. It comes entirely from sharing what you have and caring for others today. Section 4. Empty Hands, Lasting Legacy, the Third Wish. And that brings us to the third wish. He wanted everyone to witness his empty hands just dangling freely outside the confines of his coffin. Now, this wasn't some mistake or a lack of dignity by the undertakers. No, it was a highly intentional, carefully orchestrated display. By making sure his hands were let loose and visible to every single onlooker lining the streets, he was laying out the raw, unvarnished truth of the human condition. Honestly, it's a profound statement of vulnerability from a guy who was basically known entirely for his invincibility. 0. That is the exact amount of material wealth that even the greatest, most powerful conquerors can take with them into the afterlife. Those empty, loose hands unequivocally prove that you exit this world exactly the same way you entered it. But while his hands were entirely empty, this whole gesture sets up a really powerful duality. First, you have this stark reality. You can't take anything with you. But then there's the incredibly inspiring part. You can leave a whole lot for others. Even if you leave with completely empty hands, the impact of your actions, your sharing, your caring, all of that remains long after you are gone. Section 5. The Ultimate Sovereignty, Synthesizing the Final Lessons. When we pull all of this together, we can clearly see this cohesive philosophical journey. It goes from accepting death to fully rejecting greed and finally focusing purely on what we leave behind. You've got the top doctors carrying the coffin, right? Showing death comes for everyone. Then you have the scattered wealth, proving that real joy lies in giving to others while you're here. And finally, those empty hands reminding us that while we take absolutely nothing, we can leave a massive, massive legacy. It's just a brilliant framework for perspective, delivered without him having to speak a single word. So, since every single one of us is going to leave this world with empty hands, I'm going to leave you with this to ponder. What kind of legacy are your hands building for others right now? Are you holding on way too tightly to things that are eventually just going to be scattered in the dirt? Or are you actively using your time to care, to give, and to create a legacy that outlasts you? Thanks for joining me for today's Explainer, and I really hope these final lessons from Alexander the Great help you focus on what truly matters.